Hello, everybody. It's a little different of a broadcast this time around, but CF1's coming at you an hour early on Tuesday before our Central Region matchup between the two undefeated squads of Oregon State University and University of Houston Premier. We have a chance to discuss our power rankings, the weekly power rankings that myself, Kieran, and Scotty let out on Twitter. We now have a forum and a platform to share with you our thoughts and who we think are going to be the top teams heading into CF1 playoffs. Now, we're going to go through this in a little bit of a format here, folks. We like to have some structure here at CF1, like to keep things nice and organized. We're going to start by talking about the bottom half. Scotty, I see what you're doing right there. We're going to start off by talking about the bottom half of our power rankings, the 6 through 10 slots, and then we'll highlight our 1 through 5 slots. And without further ado, why don't we get the show on the road, folks? And I'll start it off with the one and only CF1 president, Kieran. I'll give you the floor for your bottom of the top 10 picks.
Thank you, Kenny. All right. We start off hot at number 10 with Army West Point. Army has been on a hot streak lately, coming out in the second seed in their East group, taking down the Miami Redhawks last night. It was a close-fought victory for the Army. And what I really like about Army is how much they have grown over the course of these semesters. It wasn't too long ago that most people would have thought of Army as a sort of easy victory or a cakewalk team. They've gotten very good very quickly. And if this season was a little bit longer, I think they would be a top 5 team given their rate of development. They're still a little top heavy. They're still not right in the meta fit right now, but I really like what I've seen from them thus far. Coming in at number 9, we have Vespa. I really like what they've done over at Virginia Tech. They have a star-studded lineup that does what they need to do, and we still aren't sure if we've seen the best of them yet. They have a player that can't play on their normal Monday night schedule who will be active during the playoffs, so I think we're going to see a better version of Vespa coming into the playoff series. They have adopted the Astra. You know, the real question that remains to be seen with them is, can they beat the best teams? And they haven't yet proven that, but we're looking forward to seeing what they can do in the playoffs. Coming in at number 8, we have Waterloo. Waterloo has been having a heck of a second split, taking down their classic rivals in Ryerson, taking down Army, and taking down the Miami Redhawks of Ohio. They are really done well. They have great synergy. They have done everything that they needed to do. They're getting better and better each week. It just remains to be seen if the rest of the competition is just that much better. I think regardless, we're probably going to see Waterloo make it into our grand finals. So they'll be surpassing some of these teams on the power rankings over the next week or so. But, it's going to be really close. It's going to be really interesting to see how they can really develop over these last 10 days. Mm-hmm. Coming in at number 7, we have DePaul. I really like what DePaul has been doing these last few weeks. They took out TAMU last week in a big rematch of where DePaul last time that match took place. They got a little bit rolled, especially in map 2 after they came off a really close map 1. Yeah. I think it was 13-1 if I remember correctly, Kenny, and it
might have even been 13-0. I think it was 13-0 that second match.
It was 13-0.
It was signed, sealed, delivered.
Yeah, and you know what? What was really great to see from them this time is they've now adapted, right? They knew TAMU's strategy, they knew what to expect, and they really developed and changed their style and came out with a 2-0 W, which is just such a massive reversal. They're going to take the first seed in their group. They have a pretty easy matchup this week, so they'll be coming in hot. They'll have an easy first round in the Central playoffs. Hopefully that gets them some momentum going into the semifinals, and they have a legitimate shot of making it into the grand finals at this point. What will remain to be seen is how do they go up against the other half of the Central groups, with OSU and UH going to be in their pod at some point in time. Can they beat either of those two teams? That remains to be seen. A team that's been on a downward trajectory, my former number 1 pick, rounds out my bottom 5, TAMU. I have a lot of faith in them. I think they are a great team. Individually, probably one of the more talented teams in the entire league and in the entire conference. But they seem to have only one strategy. It's press W, go forward. We don't care. Ultra aggression. They really haven't adapted to the meta. It's just at this point in time, how good is TAMU going to do against those teams that have adapted, have changed their styles to be more current and more, with the Viper and the Astra. remains to be seen, especially as they go up against better and better competition. I think TAMU has a lot to prove.
And something I want to point out, Perez, about your picks, I noticed that especially for the Eastern region, you seem to be showing some flavor towards them. You're the only one who has both Vespa and DPU peeking in there, I want to say. You got a lot of love for these Eastern regions, which over time, I feel like I've said that I always thought the Eastern regions kind of lacked the depth of team talent. But I mean, here at the end of the split too, you're backing them up, saying that they got themselves quite a few contenders. And I guess that leads me into my next point, I guess, statement. Scotty, you have the secret formula. Now, I know it's not going to be much of your opinions because you have the computer behind the scenes crunching those numbers, but give us that info about your 6 through 10 picks and what the formula says about what they're going to look like.
For sure. So I guess we'll start off at the good old 10, Vespa. New pick for this week. I think they have been consistently playing very well throughout round 1 and round 2. I think, the reason that we're seeing them finally on the leaderboard is after like a relatively good couple of weeks. I believe last week they played, let's double check this, because I know I'm going to mess it up. They played PSU. And again, PSU had a very strong showing in round 1, or split 1, excuse me. But split 2, a rougher showing is what we'll say. Vespa soundly defeated them, which is a pretty big rematch. And then the week prior, again, they played, UNF, which was another big win for them. And then another pretty sizable win, in my opinion, and the reason why we don't see ONU on this list anymore is their win in round 3 of split 2 over ONU. But again, the numbers speak for themselves. Happy to have them here for, I believe, the first time ever on the Power Rankings list. I'm glad Kieran also picked them up. They're definitely going to be a team to watch in the East. So we'll see how they play going into Thursday, round 1 of playoffs. Now, let's talk about TAMU, or Texas A&M. That's what we're going to say. We're going to call them Texas
A&M. Do we need to get
A&M.
Josh Beard on the call? Do we need to just...
I was going to say, well, I'm going to be honest, guys. I kind of felt like they threw.
Yeah.
Last week we saw we saw a rough game against DPU, and that's not to diminish DePaul in any way. They're a fantastic team, but I think it was like for almost all of Split 2, we saw Texas A&M at the top of everybody's leaderboard except for mine, and we'll get there. But again, there wasn't necessarily a huge surprise. I think Texas A&M has a fantastic team. I think it's kind of a bummer they're all the way at 9. But again, they moved to 9 from what was it? I believe 4 on my list from last week. And again, all it takes is one pretty heavy loss against a team that they should realistically beat, and I believe they would have had to have beaten last in round 1. Forgive me, I don't remember the score, but.
Yeah,
it's on here.
2-0.
Yeah, and that's a huge surprise, right? Because this match was a 2-0 the opposite way.
Exactly, yeah.
So it is what it is. Cal Poly, my number 8 pick, right? Is that yeah? I'm trying to match it up on my screen here. Number 8. Cal Poly is. It's funny because they were the Broncos, but they're kind of like the dark horse of the West. I can't really tell every week, how they're going to play, right? They've played up to teams like SJSU, who isn't on my top 10 list, but again, that's a secret formula thing. It just means that I didn't compensate for how the strength of groups. But we don't have to go into that, guys. In any case,
yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Yeah, we'll get there. Maybe we'll get there towards the end. In any case, Cal Poly will play up to a UC Irvine. They'll play up to an SJSU. But they also, they play to the level of some of the other teams that we didn't even see make it to the playoffs, or we will see likely make it to the playoffs after Wednesday night. And I think that was kind of a bummer. I think Cal Poly, they're going to be probably pretty snug. Let me double check my numbers over here. Again, they have beaten, so they're 3-1. It looks like. So they're pretty secure in their position. We may see a head-to-head or
I think Cal Poly's 2-2, if I'm not mistaken.
Are my numbers wrong?
Cal Poly's
They
2-2.
may be.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong
They've
colors.
lost to the
I
Cal
have
Golden
everything
Bears.
color
And
coded.
they've lost to SJSU.
Yeah, you're right. All right, well, in that case, so 2-2. So they aren't as firmly snug in there as I'd hope, but we'll see after Wednesday. Again, I think a really good team, a very consistent team. You'll see that them, and again, we'll get to the Scarlet Knights here in a little bit, but they and the Scarlet Knights are the only ones that have stayed the same since last week. And there's a lot of shakeups after last week's matches.
Oh, yeah.
Next up is UC Irvine. They're the SJSU killers, right? They're the ones that came in and took a pretty big W off of SJSU. And I think that put them on the leaderboard. But after last week's match, I believe they played Golden Bears, a 26-12, or overall 26-12 round scores, which in my opinion is pretty big, right? That is a 14-point difference, which is pretty sizable.
Scotty, real quick, just to add to that, it was 13-10 and then 13-2. So, that 12 round score sounds a little different when you spread it out over the two games.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean that's fair. So it was closer than imagined. And again, not to shun the Cal Golden Bears, but UC Irvine is just, again, they're almost similar to Cal Poly. I know that UC Irvine is a fantastic team. We've seen them since the fall. They've participated very well. So it wasn't a huge shocker that they beat SJSU, but again, I'm just excited to see where they're going to land during the playoffs, to be honest. Last but not least, we're not supposed to pick favorites in this game. It's a hard job. I'm not allowed to pick favorites here, but I will say I love the Miami Redhawks team. All of them are fantastic guys. For almost, I don't even know how many weeks. Miami Redhawks were at my
Venmo transactions.
Yeah, there you go. Again, hey, shout out to Miami for the 1,000 V-Bucks. Appreciate it. But yeah, let's talk about Miami. They are not doing too hot right now. I don't know what happened the last couple of weeks. Last week was kind of a killer, and then this week, again, no surprise because, personally, I think, Army West Point is a better team than we saw last fall. Last fall, it was, they didn't play up to their caliber, at least at this caliber. I'm a little surprised that they lost. I'm not surprised that it was insanely close, but at the same time, we've seen Miami just dominate round one. They absolutely dominated round one. And having two losses now in split two. I keep saying round one. I should be saying split one. But having two losses in split two literally tanked them. The way I do my formula is it's also average from split one to split two. Which essentially means that, I know, I'll leak a little tidbit of information. It essentially means that they were playing really, really well. And then, let's say they had just lost, last week or something. They would have been pretty okay. They would have probably stayed top three or top four. But again, that second loss was just a killer. Brought them right down to sixth place, which is, again, a bummer. Fantastic guys over there. The entire Miami, shout out to the entire esports program over there. Again, I wish I could shout out more, but I probably will. So we'll see. But in any case, that is it. That is 10 through 6. Again, I'm not as in-depth as Kieran or Kenny, but I'll tell you what. The Oracle doesn't lie. So just take a look at that graphic, and it's 100% correct.
You can't doubt the numbers,
Kenny.
Scotty. You can't
that just
doubt
leaves
the numbers.
you. Give us a little bit
it's
your
my
preview
turn.
between your 10 through 6. What is your formula? How do you come to your determination? Do you throw them at a dartboard like Scotty, or do you actually put some thought into it?
So actually, I just let my dog pick up a hat. I have a hat from every single school in my living room, and she just picks up the one she likes. She's really consistent, too. She picked Tamu like 3 weeks in a row. It was crazy. But no. So with my power rankings, I try my best to not get too caught up in a team having like a one-shot wonder, and I like to see teams be a little more consistent with things, and I try my best to not let any outside matches interfere either, because I know there's a lot of competition happening in college Valorant, but at the end of the day, what matters is how you're performing in CF1. And so I'll start off with number 10, DePaul. I mean, Scotty and Kieran talked about it already. DePaul had a massive win over Tamu, coming back after losing 2-0 at the end of Split 1, I will say, towards the end of it, and now getting that 2-0 in Split 2. And that's really where it matters, because they're going to be having a ton of momentum swing them in favor for this final week, which Kieran mentioned is going to be very much a gimme game for DPU, especially if they deserve the spots in the power rankings that they got from myself and Kieran. And actually Scotty, I should say, excuse me. But they will have to show up in the playoffs, and that's really where it's going to matter, because now that Tamu lost to them, it really throws a little bit of a wrench in exactly the kind of how to gauge the talent that we see in this central group between these teams, because that's really a consistent thing, is trying to gauge this varying team's talent and how they're performing within these groups. Now, my number 9 is Miami Redhawks. Scotty touched on them as well. I have them slipping even farther, all the way down to 9th place, because they have been losing quite a few games in the second split. And I distinctly remember interviewing them at the end of Split 1, and they mentioned they wanted to be a top 5 team. They wanted to be recognized as a powerhouse. They deserve to have that kind of recognition, but here in Split 2, they're definitely leaving that to be desired. And I know they have that fire and the talent to do so, which is why I still want to give them a spot on the rankings. But going into these playoffs, it really feels like Miami is going to have to try and pull themselves back together for this first round of playoffs coming up next week, which is going to be a little intense for this squad. Number 8, Cal Poly, another sort of contentious point here. I'm of the opinion that the West is the Wild West. We have a bunch of teams really going through the I guess the best way I can think of it is Dante's Inferno at this point. They're really just going to be bred in this chaos, where when they come out, I feel like the West is going to have a lot of strong teams all vying for a top spot in the playoffs. And even though Cal Poly is sitting at 2-2, I believe they have the worst record, I think they actually do have the worst record of all teams on my power rankings, up there with Miami. So Cal Poly getting the spot really lends itself to the level of competition that they're facing, and that I really respect the teams that they're going up against. And I think 2-2 so far, possibly 3-2 at the end of this week, in the Western region, deserves to have a spot in the power rankings. And as we go through my list, you'll see the kind of respect I have for that Western region. Now, number 7 is going to be Tamu, who fell all the way from 1st place to 7th on my rankings. Now, Tamu, I really wanted to keep them looking high, but I can't have a team in 1st place go 2-0 against the likes of DePaul, who I didn't even have on my rankings before this week. A 1st place team is not going to do that. They're going to put up at least more of a fight, take a map maybe. So when I compared how they performed against DePaul and how I thought these other teams were going to perform against DePaul, that's why I sent them all the way down to 7th, because in my mind, I think every team above this point would not put up a 2-0. They would at least put up a map against DePaul, and I think every team from this point up would beat the likes of DePaul, who I've ranked number 10. So Tamu is really going to have to step it up big in the playoffs and change my mind that they deserve to have a higher ranking and should be getting that number 1 spot back. And then number 6, the last on me, what am I talking, SpongeBob? Arr. But the last one on the power rankings is the Scarlet Knights at number 6. They're staying in the spot. And I've had this issue for a few weeks, where ever since Best Student Jonah stepped down from the team, so the Scarlet Knights have really lacked an in-game leader. And recently, myself and Speezy, another caster for CF1, had a chance to commentate a match of the Scarlet Knights taking on Vespa. And I tried not to, as I mentioned, weigh these outside matches too much. But when Vespa and Scarlet Knights have already played each other in CF1, this is just a little bit of icing on the cake and what we could expect between these teams. And the Scarlet Knights did take that series 2-1. But again, when I try and compare the Scarlet Knights' performance and how they did against the likes of Vespa, I give respect to the Scarlet Knights because of how they've done already. In Split 1, they were, I believe, 2-time champions of CF1 tournaments. Now here in Split 2, they have consistently gone undefeated, so they do deserve some respect. But ever since losing Best Student, it really leaves a lot up in the air, and it feels a lot like this team relies on out-fragging their opponents and just winning aim duels time and time again. And that's not going to cut it against the teams we have in all of our top 5s.
All right, Kenny, that rounds out the 6 through 10 on each of our rosters. Let's take a look at some of the big differences that we have between all of ours. And I think the one that stands out the most right off the bat is both of you guys still have Miami in your top 10, and you both have Cal Poly sitting at 8. You know, what makes them stand out to you guys in such a way? Because, you know, I have some personal thoughts on Cal Poly, and I definitely have some personal thoughts on Miami, but, you know, do we see these teams on the upward trend, or do we think that, they are vestigial, sort of teams that are just hanging on there, and we just don't see anyone, taking their spot? Like they fell into 9. All right, there you go. Here you go. You stay there, Miami.
Scotty,
or
I'll give you the floor first.
I mean, again, when we look at the numbers, I kind of explained why they were still on there. A lot of it has to do with the fact that they went undefeated in Split 1. Even if they hadn't gone undefeated in Split 1, or if they had a little bit of a lower score, round scores in general, they probably would have been doing just as well. I think the big thing for Miami, and the reason why I'm still pretty stoked it's on the list, is because they play very, very well in their group. If I look at the numbers, their group is technically like the second, or no, it's the third most challenging group. And again, secret formula stuff, you guys wouldn't get it. In any case, though, the the Redhawks still being on the list, I'm gonna be a little honest. I'm kind of surprised. I plugged in and chugged the numbers, and I got the results here. And Miami being at 6, excuse me. I was a little shocked when we look at a team like SJSU. They lost one game, and they were completely dropped off my list. I think, again, when we look at the round scores from each of their of the Miami matchups, they're always putting up high numbers, whether that's going to a third game, which is a competitive game itself, and winning it, or just overall, just making sure that they're shutting out their opponents and having like a very significant round difference overall in most of their games. Where SGSU doesn't necessarily do that. I don't want to say that they don't have any shutouts, but they have a lot closer matches. So Miami Redhawks being at 6, yeah, it shocked me a little bit, but I can understand why they're still there.
And I will say, when you bring up the likes of SJSU, for example, one thing that I noticed with them specifically is, even though they have, like you said, they may have slip-ups, I feel like their slip-ups are a lot smaller. I mean, just looking, for example, talking about SJSU against Cal Poly recently, they beat Cal Poly. They beat them 2-1, which I think is surprising. But then when you look at the map score, you look at the spread, it's a 13-8 and a 13-3 in favor of SJSU. And the game they lost was in overtime, 14-12. So yeah, SJSU is dropping a map and whatnot, but they're still putting up a heck of a fight. Whereas we look at Miami Redhawks, and there's a reason why I let them slip so far down, and why you seem to possibly have a different opinion from what the formula is saying. And honestly, I think that lends itself to just Miami Redhawks having that bigger margin of error, I guess, or that margin of defeat.
Well, that's just it, right? So yeah, Kieran, I'll let you go.
Yeah, and if you by your math, that group is the third strongest. First off, let's check that calculus again. The West has to be the toughest group. I mean, this actually leads in a little bit well to our second point about CPP. I think Cal Poly is an amazing team. I just don't know what Cal Poly I'm going to get to week, right? Sometimes they're the team that can take down a UCI, a team that can take maps off of SJSU. They have that level of quality, that level of talent, but they're also teams that can easily drop maps to some of the lower teams, and they did that in the first split a couple times as well. So I don't like the inconsistency, especially when we're coming towards playoff time, and what will most likely be a 2-loss streak for CPP going into playoffs, right? They played SJSU last week. They play UCI this week, who I think we all agree is pretty much of a powerhouse at this point in time. I don't like that sort of streak being into it. And worst of all, if they lose to UCI tonight, they will almost, I think it's like a 90% certainty they will play UCI in the opening rounds of the West Coast playoffs, which, for a team that's inconsistent, getting scouted and getting looked at is probably the worst thing that can happen to you, right? You want to have some level of, we haven't played each other in 8 weeks. They don't know what to expect. No, now they're going to be like, okay, they saw all of our strats last night. We're now playing them again Sunday. What are we going to do? So I really think that CPP, needs to either come out with a win today and move themselves up the standings so that they can play in SJSU, or, they're going to be in a fair amount of trouble. And Miami, you can't lose 2 in a row. And you can't lose 2 in a row into teams that you not only beat badly the first go round, you beat like really badly. Like,
Yeah, that's a good point.
You beat them 2-0 and it wasn't close in split one. The fact that you lose 2-0 in split two after coming off of another loss indicates to me that they're just not adapting right. Right. I know they have an Astra, but their Astra isn't doing well. Like that level of sort of play coming into playoffs, and now they have to play Vespa in round one. There's a legitimate chance that
Banana
Miami,
Strangler.
Yeah, with Banana Strangler in the lineup too, there's a legitimate chance that Miami doesn't make it out of the first round of the East Regional Playoffs, which 3 weeks ago, we would have been like, no, you're lying. They're in. They're going to grand finals. But now it looks like a realistic possibility. So, it was hard for me to rank them in my top 10. Surprised to still see them there in yours.
Well, with this topic of top 10, let's steer ourselves back into the top half of our rankings here, because we still have to go over who we think are the best teams in all CF1. And, I gave Kieran the floor first last time, but Scotty, I want to hear what the formula has to say for the top 5 first. So give it to me, your top 5 in CF1.
Alrighty. First, we are going to start on the right-hand side here on the DPU Blue Demons. DePaul. Again, the numbers kind of have to speak for themselves here to a degree. But I will say that, out of all the teams, I think DePaul is the sneakiest one in my head. You don't hear much about DePaul. You obviously see their wins and all that kind of good stuff, but they are not a very public team, and if that makes sense. So, it's kind of surprising, but also not surprising that they have been a pretty strong contender. And again, they are on all 3 of our power rankings, which again is no surprise. They played consistently very well. I think the biggest part of that is that they have also been in a relatively easy group. Obviously Texas A&M is a very good team. SLU is a very good team. So they kind of rid out those 3 teams have kind of ridden out the top of our leaderboard here, because they've had they've had a very good split too. Honestly, split one as well. In their group in and of itself. Honestly, not too much more other than that. They've been pretty consistent on the power rankings. I think I'm pretty sure they've been on, or at least around, a majority of our power rankings in any one of ours.
I think I'm the only one who's kept them out a bit.
Yeah,
you and Kieran though have.
I was gonna say, I think they've been around 9 and 10. I think Kieran, they've been again 9 and 10. I think you've been probably.
I've been holding out
7 through 10.
This is literally the first time I put DPU, I think, on my power ranking. So.
Oh, all right. Well, there you go. In any case, I think it'll be interesting to watch them play. Again, same thing as I said. They're sneaky. I honestly, I'm trying to think of when I've seen them play, or even on Twitter. I follow a lot of the teams just to kind of see how they're doing, what they're up to. If they're picking up new players or anything like that, or funny memes. Shout out to Ryerson, Shay J. He has some pretty toasty ones. But let's move on though to 4 OSU Valorant. Guys, I'm going to be honest. OSU and UH, this game that we're going to be watching tonight, is going to be a banger. I think my formula kind of stiffed OSU. I'm going to be honest, guys. It's not a perfect formula. I think they're a little stiffed here they're a little stiff at 4, to be completely honest. Do I think that Scarlet, honestly, if I could, I'd have in tiers, right? Imagine if we were doing a tier list. At the S tier, you have UH Premier, you have your UH Premier, your Scarlet Knights. Honestly, the first 6 or 5 teams would be in that S tier, because they're all kind of equal in my mind. I think a majority of these teams, if they played each other, they would be very competitive games.
I agree.
In any case, though, again, OSU, they're kind of sitting pretty at 4. I think they're going to be a real contender. Considering, the rest of their regional group or their regional playoffs, I think they're going to be a very good contender for winning this all, to be honest. OSU has been consistently really good, and they've surprised us a lot in the fall.
Don't they have a CF1?
They're not a team
already.
Yeah, they were the last ones to win a tournament at CF1 back in December, so they are the reigning champs.
Technically, yeah. Wow, look at that. The unofficial title belt is around their waist right now.
And they've just been consistent. When I say top 4 for sure, that they are at minimum top 4.
I agree.
Who are we at now? We're at Waterloo. Oh boy. All right, again, power rankings aren't perfect. I'm gonna apologize to the Waterloo team. You guys, I don't know what happened. Maybe I input some numbers wrong or something. I'm gonna blame it on that. My formula is perfect.
Human error, of course.
It was human error. It was human error. Waterloo kind of got stiffed most of split 1 and split 2. I'm gonna be honest here. I think they've been a really good team for a while. Again, I can't pick favorites at all. I won't pick favorites, but again, really nice team, really nice group of folks, including their coordinator. Again, all awesome people. Fantastic esports program. Not to say that nobody else on this list doesn't have one, but I know there's relatively
Scotty with the hot takes only likes one esports program.
Yeah, I mean Miami. But again, if I was going to pick any team to kind of be that runner-up or the top 4 for again, I think this top 4 is likely. See the West, guys. I'm going to be honest. The West Coast not being in the top 4 kind of hurts me because I think we're going to get to the picks at a certain time where we're going to have casters kind of pick out, what does the grand finals look like. I'm going to be honest, guys. This top 4 looks really good for a grand finals. Like a UH Premier, Scarlet Knights, UW Gold, and OSU playing, each other, or at least making it to the top 4 in one way or another.
Wow. That's a spicy take.
If that happens, it happens.
Yeah, really,
it is a spicy take.
No West Coast teams in the grand finals, semis, finals. Okay.
Don't quote me on that one, please. Sure. Do not quote me.
Yeah,
literally only 3 groups going to be represented, and 2 teams from the same group making it to finals. Ooh, all right. I'll let you finish out your rankings, so let's get through these.
That's fair, man. All right, let's go to Scarlet Knights. Alma mater for both Penny and I, or Beanies and I. Oh boy, Rutgers,
Dawson?
man. I don't. Where you think that Jonah's leaving kind of impacted them a lot, I think it did impact them. Don't get me wrong, but I think it impacted them in I think it just changed them, right? I think they're still a very good team. They played consistently very well over the last split after Jonah leaving. We're glad to have him casting for us, but I think it actually made it so that other players kind of step up and fill roles that he kind of left, which is totally cool. I think it's also that's the showing of a really good program and a really good team, regardless of the sport or esport. Is like if you can have people fill roles when somebody leaves, like a good player like Jonah, and still be consistently good. That is a sign of like a very, very, very good team. But I mean, I love me some Scarlet Knights. Let's talk
Pick up the pace, Scott. Pick up the pace.
No. Okay, all right. Sorry, guys. I got a lot to talk about. I'm a talkative person. All right, UH Premier. They didn't throw. That's all I'm going to say.
Wow. Are you kidding me?
They've been killing it, man. They've been killing it. There's not much to say. What do you want me to say? They're at the top of Kenny. They're 2 on yours. They're first on mine. It is well deserved. But they didn't throw. They didn't do it. They've been playing consistently well and showing up each week to play. And I think that's always a good thing. So, I mean, it is what it is. There's my top 10. Love it or leave it.
All right, Kenny, why don't you go next, and I'll clean up for you guys.
All right, so I'll come in next. All right, so we'll start off with my 5th spot. My 5th spot is going to San Jose State University. Now, I had them number 1 for quite some time. They did lose themselves. I believe they lost just 1 game in that series. I want to say it was against UCI, who just really threw a wrench in my plans because that 2-0 against SJSU, again, I'm thinking in the same vein as with Tamu losing. SJSU dropping that 2-0 to UC Irvine. In my head, I just can't justify putting them any higher than I would put UCI. And when I try and weigh out these final few spots at the end of the day, I do think San Jose State is still a threat, and to Scotty's point with his top 4, I think any of these teams in my top 5 can realistically beat each other on any given day. It's really minute differences at this point between these teams about who's going to come out on top and who shows up on game day. But in that number 5 spot, I just feel comfortable leaving San Jose State there because they are a top 5 team, even though they lost to UCI. But I think a big telling factor is going to be when they get their chance to sink their fangs into the other regions of the country in CF1. And now with UW Golden number 4, actually Scotty brought up a really good point, how I feel like a lot of us didn't give them the respect that they deserved earlier on when we were doing these power rankings. I left them off for quite some time. But I mean, UW Golden Split 2 has been absolutely phenomenal. They've been top of their group, and for good reason as well. Their map differential is fantastic. I don't know if they've dropped a single map against any of the teams that they've actually beaten so far, if at all. I mean, just a quick skim through. I'm going to say a real quick fat no. UW Gold is perfect on all maps through this split. Yeah. So really much so deserving that rank 4 spot. The only issue I really had with moving them up at all, in my mind at least, was when UW Gold is going up against the likes of their competition. It really came to a head with they weren't facing the best teams, especially compared to these teams I have in my top 3. And, you know, we mentioned Miami has been falling off and Army has been stepping up, but still comparing the level of competition, I didn't feel comfortable leaving UW Gold higher than the 4th spot. I didn't want to put them lower either because they have not dropped a map, I said, through Split 2. So leaving them at number 4, I feel comfortable with them there. Again, at minimum, I see them as a semifinalist in this competition. I think they're going to be going really far in the playoffs. Now, number 3, I'm putting UCI. I think the West is a dominant region. They very much deserve this spot. They have beaten SJSU, a team that myself and Kieran have had at the top of our list. Kieran will get a chance to touch on SJSU on his list, but UCI beating them was a big marker for them, especially after a shaky Split 1. But I will say even that shakiness in Split 1 comes with a grain of salt because of the level of competition that we see out of that Western region. Again, I am really, really high on UCI, SJSU, and even Cal Poly, and even leaving out the Cal Golden Bears, who didn't get a chance to show up in my top 10s. All 4 of those teams from the West, I think, are going to do phenomenal in the playoffs. It's just a matter of who's going to show up best and show up biggest when we get to playoff time. And now number 2 and number 1. I mentioned this even when I left the note for Scotty of my rankings. This number 1, number 2 spot was really, really tough to call. OSU and UH Premier both been playing absolutely phenomenal. Both long-time participants in CF1 as well. Both these teams have been around since the inaugural season and the inaugural tournament, I believe, at least in UH's Premier. I don't want to speak on OSU, but I mean, they have very much earned their spots in this list. And UH consistently, time and time again, is winning out in 2-0 fashion. Their map differential is incredibly low. I don't believe they've dropped a map this entire split until tonight when they're going to be taking on OSU, where I think the winner of this match is going to be my number 1 team in all of CF1. And I'm excited to watch it because it's going to be possibly the best match we've had in broadcast for the entirety of Split 1 and Split 2 because of the implications that this has. And honestly, I know talking to UH Premier's players, I'm pretty close with a few of them, that they really value having that number 1 spot. And I know for any longtime viewers of CF1, they have struggled to secure that championship when it matters. In Split 1, they were in numerous finals or semifinals, and they just couldn't get that job done when it mattered. So I'm, in my heart of hearts, I'm pulling for UH Premier to really step up to the plate tonight and make a big play happen, make a swing at it, hit a home run, secure that number 1 spot in their group and on my rankings. But I mean, OSU, they are a force to be reckoned with, and Oregon State definitely is going to put up a hell of a fight. I mean, this is really just a heavyweight match here tonight for the Central Region with UH and OSU, and I think my power rankings are just at an asterisk until we see this match played out.
All right. I guess that leaves me. All right. So I'll make this real quick so we can have a little bit of time for analysis. But let's start off with my number 5, OSU. Obviously, OSU is our defending champion. I love what they can do. I think they have a lot of great players. The big keys for me, why they're not ranked higher right now, is there's still a lot to remain to be seen how good they are. It's part about what we see from some of these teams. The competition that they were playing in their group wasn't exactly the highest, right? They weren't exactly going up against all these power ranked teams that we see here on a day in and day out basis. So having a 1 loss to UH last split, does suggest to me, all right, they're playing well, they're playing really good, they're obviously top 5. Are they going to be a semifinalist in the grand finals? I'm not quite sure yet. I want to see what they can do. Come tonight, come in our stream just in a few minutes. Plus, it still remains to be seen. They're going to have to get through DePaul or TAMU in the semifinals to make it to the finals of the Central and get that automatic seed into the grand finals. So that's a really tough, tall order to do, especially if they haven't played those teams a whole heck of a lot. Coming in at number 4, we have the Scarlet Knights. I think in some instance it still remains to be seen how good they are without Jonah, to echo what Kenny and Scotty have said. But I think the biggest issue for me with Rutgers is, are they a little bit, have they atrophied? They don't play in a lot of the outside leagues and tournaments that we see a lot of our top teams sort of dominate. They sort of stuck to. They played in the Big Ten. I think they may have played in NACSS. But, a lot of these have been doing the battlegrounds and grinding out all these tournaments, while Rutgers has been sitting pretty, just dominating the East. So, is it are they like a muscle memory that is just a little bit out of sync right now? Are they going to be as good when they have to go up against the likes of, it's possible they make it to grand finals and they have to play, Houston 1, SJS in round 2, and then another team in round 3 that are all in the top 5 or 6. That's a lot of competition in a row in a single day. It will be interesting to see how well they do in that sort of schedule like that. UCI is my number 3. I really like UCI. They could easily be number 1. It really just comes down to the fact of how well they do tomorrow versus CPP. CPP has been a barometer. They always play up to the level of their competition or down to the level of the competition, like we were talking about earlier. So I would like to see how they do tomorrow, and then I may adjust them in my internal rankings, maybe putting them up another spot or 2. But they're undefeated. They have quality talent. They have one of the best programs out there for esports in general. I like what they're doing. I like how they're heading. It just remains to be seen in a tournament setting how well they do. They have stumbled at times in tournaments. Rutgers knocked them out in an early tournament in the first or second round, and then the next tournament they came back and went to the finals. So they definitely have some roadblocks in front of them. Want to see how they do to end out the season. Number 2, I was a big holdout for UH Premier for a long time. I usually had them around 4 or 5 in my power rankings. I think they are a tremendously talented team. I probably think they are the deepest team in our league, bar none. They literally play with an 8-9-man rotation. So they're just so deep. But I think that depth is actually a hindrance for them, right? When you're rotating those players in as much as they are, they're not getting as many reps, right? It's not like they're doing specialists where, okay, we're playing ice backs. Our number 8 person is our Viper, number 1. We substitute him in. We win the map because all he does is grind Viper each day, every day. It's sort of like, okay, who's doing well, who's doing bad? Well, okay, we'll sub you out, we'll sub him in. And doing that sort of level of rotation, it's very fickle. And I don't like fickle when you come down to playoffs because it leads to comms issues. It leads to, synergy issues. It leads to you guys just haven't practiced as much as you probably should have. But they have the greatest depth and talent in that sort of way. Finally, we have SJSU. They have been dominant. They've been dominating other leagues and tournaments. They've made it to grand finals or finals and pretty much everything that they play and everything that they touch. They have not adapted to the meta as well as we would like to see. So I think that's what really threw them off when they played UCI earlier on in the season. It was week 1 of Split 2. That was when we saw Astra, Viper get the buffs, bye-bye Bucky. All the things that happened, happened right before that matchup. They didn't do well. I think they've adjusted to the meta a little bit, but I would still like them to pick up the Viper and the Astra to a larger extent. But they are still my overall favorite. I think just the quality, the top-tier players that they have on their team just carry them through it. There's not a weak link on that team, but I do think that they're so top heavy. Yeah.
Choi Boy's insane. Rank 8, I think, at some point in NA, if not even higher. It was absolutely ridiculous.
So I think.
Well, I think it's fan service.
Explain. I want to hear why.
Oh no! I mean, I'm just mostly.
That's
kidding.
what I'm saying. Exactly. Put you on the spot. You can't back up the claim, Scotty. When you're feeling the heat, you shrivel up like a shrimp.
I don't know, Kieran. I feel like if you felt that way, you'd put UCI up there, man. I feel like UCI is who you're talking about. That's why I was thinking about your SGSU pick, and it's the same thing that for me in Miami. Right, I love Miami, but they had to go.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we only got 1 more minute left, so let's wrap this up and sign it off so our other casters can get in here and set up for the match. But just for me, if I'm looking at teams that I'm looking to see in the finals and grand finals, it's probably going to be SJSU, UCI, Rutgers, probably UW Gold, and then we're going to see probably Houston, and I don't know who the second team is going to be out of the Central. So once you're in that top 6, anything can happen because it's been so long since we have cross-regional competition and playing with different pings. Ping is going to become an issue and a factor again, where it's been really minimized during the course of the season. So I think that is going to be an additional weight that a lot of these teams are going to have to negotiate and navigate come grand finals.
I agree entirely. Yeah, I mean, when we have a chance to finally see these teams battle it out across the country, it's going to be a long time coming. It feels like we're building up to the climax of this long-awaited season finale here. We're hitting the playoffs. It's the mid-season break, the time skip, and everyone's favorite anime is coming. And then we really get to see that CF1 competition. But as Kieran mentioned, everybody, we do have to give our commentators and our production a little chance to set up before tonight's barn burner of a match in the Central region. We're going to be seeing OSU, Oregon State University, take on University of Houston Premier. And the winner of that's going to be taking number 1 spot in their group, and you're not going to want to miss the action. We have Kura and Ravish on the call, but before you can see their lovely faces, you have to say goodbye to ours. So on behalf of myself, on CF1 President and CF1 Scotty, thank you for checking out the power rankings and enjoy tonight's broadcast. We'll see you later.